All right.
See a couple of you joining. We'll give us another moment. If you've just joined us, we'll give it another couple of minutes just to get those stragglers that are coming out of top of the hour meetings. So one moment.
Morning, everybody.
Just about 90 more seconds or so. We'll start at hour minute 02 to make sure we've got some attendees in the room. One moment. Thirty more seconds or so.
T minus.
Makes it sound very ominous.
It does. It does. It's like there's something like very foreboding about it. Dun, dun, dun. Let's see how obnoxiously it sounds when I take a drink of my water. I'm hoping the background noise won't be too bad while we're here.
Oh, you sound fine.
Okay, good.
All right, at 02 minutes, we'll go ahead and get started. And those that may join a little bit late, if they wish, can catch up on the beginning of the webinar as they wish later on. Welcome to our Hangout. Hey, and we mean that in the greatest sense of the word. This is a Hangout time. This is a time for us to be able to interact with you, for you to be able to interact with us. We can let you know some things that are going on at JFrog, and you can let us know what's on your mind. This is intended to be educational for you, of course, but also as a conversation. So please don't hesitate. We've got two housekeeping items for you. Number one, in the background for you as our partners, as you have some questions that may come up in the course of the webinar, in the chat, feel free to put those questions in there. And we've got some folks on the back end with JFrog that are going to be raising their hand for us. It'll be difficult for Bill and myself, who are going to be presenting today. We'll introduce ourselves in a second, but it'll be difficult for us to see those questions as we're in the midst of presenting. So please feel free to put those in there, and we'll be able to address those questions as we go. Also, please note that we will be doing some polls, quick polls right in the Zoom webinar platform. So it's just easy click and answer kinds of questions that'll be coming up. And the reason to do that is to just help us make sure that these Hangouts are more useful for you as time goes by, can educate you, can interact with you, and train you, whatever your needs may be. So please be on the lookout for those. When those pop up, they'll be open for 30 to 60 seconds or so. And then we'll be able to share some of the results of those with you as well after the webinar, and some follow-ups. So thank you for participating actively. And again, feel free to ask any questions that you may have as we go along. Great. So the impetus for this particular Hangout, we have some new releases. We'll say hot off the presses, some new JFrog offerings that are available very recently, some of which were announced at the Swamp Up JFrog User Conference. Some have come along in the meantime as well. But we're going to put them into two categories for you today to be able to consume, one around security and the other around DevOps. In security, you'll hear about SAST, S-A-S-T. For those of you that are not familiar with that acronym, we'll get into that, what that means. But for our purposes, as you gear yourselves up for our Hangout today, code scanning. Okay, you're used to thinking of JFrog in the binary realm, but this is getting into code scanning. We're also going to talk about the new JFrog catalog and what that means for a listing of 4 million open source software packages, and how you can take advantage of those offerings for your customers. We're also going to talk about in DevOps the release lifecycle management functionality that was put out into the marketplace recently with a new release first approach. We'll talk about how you can help your customers be more evidence-based, meet some more compliance needs, and also, of course, release faster, more securely. And then we're also going to talk about MLOps, that's machine learning operations. So JFrog has some new offerings in the AI and machine learning realm that's going to be able to bring some of those into the world of DevOps for your customers. And we'll talk about why that's important and maybe some of the sweet spots for that conversation as we go along. I'm Jens Eccles. You can see my smiling face there. That was probably a year and 20 pounds ago. So thank you for being gracious. And the handsome man there on the right is Bill Manning, who's joining me. Hey, Bill, and who
Hey
is
guys.
on the solutions engineering side for JFrog. So I'm hosting, but Bill obviously is going to be able to provide the more technical color for some of these things that we're going to be talking about today. We're going to do
Doing it
this.
live. By the way, doing it live from KubeCon right now. If you happen to be here or near here, come by, say hi. So I'll be doing it. So hopefully it's not too noisy where I'm at. So
very good. Well, thank you, Bill, for stepping away from that KubeCon conference for a minute to join us. We'll do this in kind of a Q&A format, where I'm gonna use Bill as my subject matter expert on a few of these items, and hopefully keep it a little bit interactive for you. And we'll try to finish on time or even a little bit early out of respect for you. So where do we find ourselves today? Customers right now are looking at their supply chains, and there are many of them that they have, your customers, JFrog customers, and it can feel like it's a little bit on fire between the demands of speed, between the demands of security, between the demands now of artificial intelligence and machine learning. And there's new compliance issues every day. In fact, we just saw yet another White House executive order here in the United States about how we're going to utilize artificial intelligence. There's all kinds of things that came out around software bill of materials in recent years. So what is a customer to do? Because the business certainly doesn't slow down, and the empathy is not there from the rest of the business saying, you guys have a lot on your plate. Let's just quit delivering software, is obviously not an option. So with that, those of you that are on the call are probably familiar that we offer here at JFrog the software supply chain platform, which is to help companies manage this process from end to end, everything from the code that they write, how they ingest third-party packages. Almost all of your customers are familiar with JFrog Artifactory. They're on the left side as the system of record for their binaries and their software supply chain process. Also our security solutions, and then distributing that software ultimately to the edge where it's going to be consumed, whether that edge is devices, whether that edge is a cloud instance, data center, doesn't really matter. JFrog's pillars of DevOps, security, and IoT will be able to take care of that for your customers. And we'll dive into some of the things that are new today. So again, we're going to start with the security realm. This is our business. We've been on the center part of this diagram for many years on how you store, build, release, and distribute software. And now with some of these new releases getting into source code and first-party code itself, as well as the binaries that you can manage all the way to the edge. So let's start with the new release of SAST. And if you don't know what SAST is, Bill, what does that stand for?
security application testing. So software security applications. Oh, sorry, I'm hearing something here for a second. Can you go ahead? I
Okay,
can't hear
all
you.
right. So static
Technical problem.
application security
This is
testing
security
is where we're
testing.
going. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
there we go. I'm back now.
It's a good,
So,
it's a good quiz. So again, you'll see this SAST when people say SAST and just mouth the word. We often hear SaaS, SaaS, as a cloud solution. SAST is not a friendly acronym to confuse with that, but it's static application security testing, which is, for our purposes, essentially code scanning. So Bill, maybe what is the exact problem that you're seeing when you've talked with customers for decades around some of this stuff? What is it that SAST is actually addressing? What's the core problem?
well, in this case, right, one of the things is that as developer velocity increases over time, right, the sheer number of features, the sheer number of things they need to do, sometimes, just coding and doing your code is one thing, but making sure that the code that you're creating is safe, secure, and compliant is always the thing. And sometimes it's there's plenty of tools out there that look at this model saying, hey, by the way, this function can be done slightly differently. You're not doing the try catch correctly. You might have some sort of hard coded variable things, or things like you might be uploading a file the path that you're using might be invalid, or it might be susceptible to security. And the thing is, how do you ensure security compliant code without being a lot of pressure or doing it after the fact? And that's doing it while the coder is coding, giving them the information they need to properly do the job that they do, safe and compliant, so your company doesn't become some sort of headline that you've leaked data or you've disrupted something based on the coding that you've done. So the thing is by catching the bugs early, right? This is one of the things that we do, making sure that you address them where it matters most, right? The ROI is greatest at the developer level. If you're finding these issues in production, it's 100 times more expensive than at the developer. So making sure that the initial part of it is compliant instead of filing it later on down the path.
Yeah, real quick, Bill. I think one of the concerns that partners and potential customers have when it comes to code scanning is that I'm going to need to upload my code, or JFrog is somehow, or another solution is going to have control of my code, inspect it, give me some results, and give it back. And I'm not really interested in that. So how are we making sure that doesn't happen?
Right. So we have ID plugins, right? We've had the ID plugins for a while, and that handled a lot of our composition analysis, right? The components that you actually go ahead and utilize. Now we're having that same thing like VS Code, IntelliJ, Eclipse, Visual Studio, giving that information to the developer where it matters. So now, as they're actively going through, they can go ahead and actually look at the portions. I have an example of it too. That we can always utilize and show later on if some people have questions. But the whole thing is being able to diagnose and get that information reflected directly in the developer's face, right? In the IDE where they do their job. Or if they're not using an IDE, they can use also our JFrog CLI by doing an audit of the stuff that they're doing, and then we'll get back results. Or they can also use Frogbot. So Frogbot is like a dependent bot on steroids, but it also has SAST enabled also. So they can, as they do a pull request and check things in, they can also see the same results. So it's actually multiple places in which we're actually inspecting, or you can inspect, the actual code itself. And the thing is that use this in conjunction with our other tool, parts of the tool set for SCA, which we'll talk about in a minute or so. But the idea is that not only are you, if you're implementing a library, but now also how you're implementing the code with that library. Are you doing the best practices for it? So the thing is it just makes it faster because it's right where the developer needs to get their job. And since we are a CNA, we actually provide research data to it so that the developer doesn't have to go searching through places like StackPath and other places where they can go ahead, look, they can go ahead, Stack Overflow, they can go in and just look and have the information where they need it, where it's most relevant.
Now, this is a JFrog webinar, so of course we're going to try to talk about why JFrog solutions are the very bestest and why everybody of your customers should be utilizing JFrog solutions. We're not naive to the fact that this idea of code scanning or testing code early is not brand new, right? We're not unique in the market that we have this. However, as Bill noted, by combining that functionality along with all the other binary scanning tools, the contextual analysis, the secrets detection, some of the other things JFrog offers, it really is an end-to-end experience. But Bill, on the SAST front specifically, on this code scanning front specifically, you have a note here that says, too many false positives, most are not valid. So what do you mean by that, and how are people really wasting some time maybe in this particular task?
Right. It's the same idea, right? The same ideas that other, companies have, of course, with like looking at static code. But the thing is that they're looking at the components themselves by interjecting also things like SCA into it and knowing how the functions actually operate. We can provide more enriched data, like I said, that removes it. Are you using that potentially threatening component? Is it, really are you really having the issue that it says it's having, the false positive? And we actually delineate through that to provide you with better results. So it's the combination of efforts of both parts of the tool that really provide the maximum amount of results to have them do what they do. And the thing is that it allows the developer to operate more rapidly, more quickly. I mean, I don't know, Jens, if you want me to show what it looks like in the IDE, but I have an amazing example where it shows the information in the enriched data so people can get a taste of it if you want. But the idea is simple. By providing that rich contextual analysis, and on top of that, and also what we bring with, with SAST, you really can see all the details, all the level of information, plus also too, like I said, our research data, which really can help understand the issue as opposed to just presenting an issue. It's about the understanding and what they can do to fix it, and also what else it's going to affect. And the evidence trail that we provide is something, in my opinion, is absolutely incredible. Being able to actually see the entry point of something, and also too the actual exploit itself and all the pieces that it touches throughout the code, really gives you a sense of the potential security threats that you're trying to prevent.
Great. So in a nutshell, we're letting people find vulnerabilities in first-party code while working within their IDE. These are developers themselves. This is not something that's getting shipped to them. They can discover it themselves. Bill's talked about the IDE plugins, Frogbot, etc. And for those of you that maybe are not quite as technical, maybe more on the sales and marketing side with your particular partnership with JFrog and your role, first-party code is the stuff you're writing yourself, right? That's the stuff that is kind of the bespoke code that developers are building to stitch together and add value to the applications that right now are 80-90% or more open source packages. Those are third-party codes. That's third-party code and packages. We've got other solutions that we'll talk about for third-party code and packages in a moment, but this is focused on that first-party code. Bill talked about some of these integrations and working at the source code level. And this point is important here for your customers to know, because with all of these security and compliance concerns that they have as a business, they're not absolutely not interested in uploading code or building in shared environments or where anybody else could get their intellectual property. No code ever leaves their environment, and this is done locally on the developer's machine, which is a great value add for them. And sometimes those scans, Bill, over time, maybe 30 seconds, have taken a long time in this industry, and that's just a waste of time. Developer got to go have lunch while his security scan runs. What do we have here?
Yeah, so one of the nice features is because actually it's funny is the actual ID plugins is based on our CLI, right? So if you're not using our CLI, or you're not encouraging your partner, as partners, encouraging your customers to use our JFrog CLI for a lot of things they're doing, one of the things is speed and efficiency. And we've harnessed that as part of the ID plugins, as part of the static code, now the SAS analysis and stuff. But like you said, it's multi-threaded, it's extremely fast. And the thing is, since we're only doing metadata in that approach, and it's not passing data off the machine in terms of the actual code itself, it's extremely fast. And the thing is being able to, I have a project right now as an example, 10,000 lines of code just in one file, and it produces it back to me in less than 7 seconds, which is insane. Absolutely mesmerizing, insane.
Great. And just a quick clarification as we can get into acronym city around security, and I'll do this for just a moment. You've known JFrog maybe for software composition analysis, SCA tool or X-ray tool, for a long time. And what that does, the easy way to think about it is the SCA is looking at packages that are already in your pipeline, already in your organization, for license compliance, vulnerabilities, malicious nature of those packages. Whereas SAST, the code part, is code developers write and identifying vulnerabilities before they're ever even built and put into packages in the first place.
One of the nice things about this, really quick, just before we go on to the next subject, is that remember also too, with our SCA component, if you're using our advanced security, which SAST is part of, we also have the contextual analysis component, which also helps delineate through the number of potential CVEs that you're being affected by in conjunction with SAST is super powerful, because the thing is that in most cases, a lot of the vulnerabilities that companies have and they go to attack may not be valid, right? They may not be affected by the actual issue itself. So we actually will let them know in the IDE, yes, this is applicable. You need to fix this, or no, you're not being affected by it, right? So allowing developers to concentrate on what they need to concentrate on, and then adding now with SAST allows them also down to look at the code portion to make sure they're writing the best code possible.
Very good. Thank you, Bill. So in the interest of time, we'll move along. You'll see for each of these solutions on the right side, we've got some recommended buyers or people or personas that we have seen work well between JFrog and our channel partners to identify that might be most keen on these types of solutions. So I won't read those out to you. You can see them. But things to listen for when it comes to SAST. You might hear people actually talk about code scanning or code analysis, managing DevSecOps across binaries or code. or most importantly, end code. It's got to be a holistic approach, and that's thankfully one thing JFrog is most excellent at. You'll also hear the term zero-day vulnerabilities, which is things that are being introduced that maybe nobody knew about before, that you are introducing into your code. End-to-end DevSecOps, and of course, when you're talking about shifting left, or your customers have the shifting left initiatives, doesn't get any further left than the developers writing the bespoke code themselves. So these are kind of some terms that can be ringing in your ears as you're talking about closing out the year with some of your customers. Maybe you're working on some renewals, maybe you're working at bringing in some new solutions in 2024. These are the kinds of things that you'll be listening for. Great. Let's move quickly, and Bill, we'll try to do catalog maybe just in a couple of minutes. But
Yeah.
the JFrog catalog was released at SwampUp, and overall, you can think of it as the LinkedIn, the Google, pick your favorite search or major listing of software packages as a whole. But there's 4 million of these open source software packages listed in the all new JFrog catalog. Bill, why the heck do we need so many?
Well, the thing is there's so many out there, because it's not just individual versions, right? There's always multiple versions of these libraries that are out there. And this is a way for companies to quickly go ahead and research, either prior, before usage, or, if they have a question about, what are the potential threats, issues, even down to your legal teams, by the way, even down to being able to look at these packages that are there, because there's so many. I actually have companies that their legal team wanted to use it. So this way they can see what are the licenses, or be able to investigate which versions are most susceptible. So having that amount, vast amount, allows companies to really quickly research it without having to go dig through all the minutiae of everything out there in the world. It's a very consolidated view, a very effortless view for the companies to evaluate the things that they're looking into the package.
So if I'm one of our partners is here on the call, and they're talking to their customers about, say, open source security, open source usage, what does that really look like in practicality for that end customer if they're saying, okay, I'm going to get a hold of JFrog curation and this catalog? What did I have to do before that I now don't have to do?
Right. So one of the biggest things is that I see with customers that I deal with on a regular basis, and when we discuss this point is that one of the biggest problems is actually finding which vulnerabilities affect which version very quickly, right? Without having to download it and scan it and do a bunch of different things. So by providing this level of information, allows companies to say, hey, you know what, here's that version, or, we want to use this version. In some cases, there are still companies that need approval paths for this, especially against regulated environments, for them to quickly research it and look at things that are potentially threatening rapidly, right? To get those answers that they need as fast as possible, because there's so much, so many different locations for information. And in a lot of cases, it's not very consolidated, and this provides a consolidated view, quick response, quick action, everything that a company needs. It really expedites and helps security teams where it matters most, for things like even root cause analysis. Companies that have to do root cause analysis, if something did go wrong, it could take them forever. It takes them days and weeks and months sometimes to find the information and how far the spread is. But the initial starting point is, what is affecting me? How is it affecting me? Or is it potentially affecting me? But also, too, what information do I know about it? And what potential threats does it bring to me as an organization? Where it could affect me the most?
And in tandem with JFrog curation and some of the other tools in the platform, of course, your customers can build some business decisions based off of the information that they have here. So, for example, maybe your corporation doesn't want to allow certain levels of CVSS scores within the organization, or they don't want to allow a certain package type within their organization, or they don't want to consume certain open source packages based off of risk scores brought to you by JFrog or other sources, right? So, so being able to have the data in front of you is not just like, well, that's a nice list. Obviously, they can make some very intelligent, secure, and compliance-oriented decisions and build business policies around what they want to do around the 4 million and growing open source software packages out there in the world. Any color commentary there, Bill?
Yeah, it was just like I said, like you said, though, 4 million packages and growing, right? There's constant deluge of this. And at the same time, it's like, you don't want your developers to have to go too deep into a lot of this stuff. This is a lot of compliance, like a lot of the security and compliance, the legal. Like I said, this is a place for them to get an understanding without having to do the coding, right? It's really good for people who are outside of maybe the hands-on coding realm, but are part of the security aspect. Like I said, the legal, the management, things like that. It's a really beautiful way to get a visual on everything.
So you might wonder for yourself, and thank you for participating in those polls as they come up. You might be wondering for yourself, is there anybody else that's really doing this out there? And what you can offer to your customer, this combination of, first of all, the largest, most rich catalog is now available. Nobody else has that many out there, and with that level of detail, and also combined with the curation solution, which you've heard about before, really packs a 1-2 punch. There are a couple of competitive solutions out in the market that do pieces of this, and we would be remiss if we didn't mention Sonatype firewall. So if you have customers that are working kind of in that Nexus ecosystem, obviously we have corresponding solutions for artifact management, and we could go down the rat hole on Sonatype for sure. But for firewall specifically, this is going to be closest to our curation solution. GitLab is working on a dependency firewall, which is, as far as we can tell, is not quite as rich in functionality just yet, but we'll wait and see what that final component looks like. Endor Labs starting to get into the longer tail of some of this management, but that curated catalog specifically, you see companies like Tidelift. If you have customers that are looking at or utilizing Tidelift, or even Google Assured Open Source has a catalog that they kind of put their Google green check mark next to. It's a few hundred packages. You can actually utilize Google Assured Open Source as one of the pieces of data in the JFrog catalog. You can say, is that part of that? And even build a business policy around that. So Bill, any good notable mentions on the competition before we move from catalog?
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, as Jen said, there is competition out there. But the thing is that, this is one part of a larger security solution, right? And if you look at the rest of the stuff that we're doing, it allows you to have a more consolidated approach and consistent approach by using this as the input level of the beginning of your supply chain, right? With curation being as, like, we always equate it to being like a bouncer outside the club, going down the line saying, you can come in, you can't come in, you can come in, you can't come in. But then you enhance that by having a catalog. You even do research on the things beforehand. But then once it's inside, having X-Ray and our other security solutions continue your security journey is really the thing. So it's having that consistent, set of information from before it gets in, when it gets in, while it's in your system, down to your production, and having that entire scope.
Very good. So you can see some of the things to listen for here. This top one is actually when there's a CIO and CISO surveys done, is what the heck is in my environment? What are those developers pulling out of the internet? Those darn developers just trying to be fast, yanking the stuff down. And then they're the ones that then have to go clean up their mess with the vulnerability detection and remediation advice. But you will hear, as Bill said, from legal and compliance teams around, hey, what are we using in here? What kind of data did we have? What did we know about this? What kind of policies did we build around it to try to put some of the right guardrails around these types of solutions?
I mean, with the operational risk component alone, just really quick, just so you understand, a majority of the actual components that, these libraries, these third-party FOSS components that people, developers are using, whether it's direct or indirect, most of them are old, outdated, or end of life, right? And this helps companies realize that they do run into, say, a bug with a library, and that library hasn't been updated since 2009. You're pretty much assured you're not going to get a fix for that. So this might provide you with a way to search for an alternative. Also, on top of that, having that greater understanding, your developers at companies are artists. And this allows you to put safeguards in place without disrupting their ability to create their code as craft, right? So they can create what they do.
Great. And with that, I'll do a quick check here in the chat. I see nothing too out of the ordinary. People asking about slide availability and such, as they should. We'll move on from then that security-oriented session, which we covered SAST and we covered catalog. Now moving to release lifecycle management. So this is going to be, we've got two items to highlight on the DevOps side for you here. And this is release lifecycle management. We'll go through this relatively quickly, but wanted to make sure that you understood that. So Bill, release lifecycle management sounds like software development, lifecycle, all these things kind of start munging together. But what is the real crux of this release first process that JFrog is going about? It's not a product. but it's a
No,
methodology that we are spearheading. And maybe you could help illuminate for the customers, how would this actually manifest itself?
absolutely. So one of the key core components of developing software, and there's lots of methodologies out there. There's things called 12 factor. There's a lot of different methodologies that are put into place. But one of the key components of every single methodology of development is the idea of the atomic unit. The things that you produce as a software developer, development team in development should be the same thing that you put into production, right? Any variance or change in between there breaks the system, right? You're using the atomic unit. So the lifecycle management ensures that the things that people create in dev that might go to, say, the software development lifecycle QA, from QA to staging, staging to production, or whatever the lifecycle may be, stays consistent, right? It's, and gives the ability for it to be a solid, stable release. Now, with our RLM, the idea here is that most of the time now with software, especially things like web services that you might be utilizing, are not just single components. They're made of multiple components, microservices or whatnot. And this allows them to combine them together as a singular release, an atomic unit that they can pass through the various software development lifecycle stages.
So beforehand, what would somebody have had to do in order to accomplish what you're talking about? So we've heard about promotion for 25 years, right? We're talking about promoting software or putting it through the quality gates. Like you said, maybe we're like, hey, developers are done. Now we're going to ship this to QA, and they take however long they take, and they ship it along. So why is this any different than the process we've undergone for decades?
Well, exactly, and that's an important thing, right? This has been going on for decades, and each one of these components that might make up, like I said, so let's use a web services as an example, right? And if you were going with a regular methodology, you'd have a Helm chart to launch the services in Kubernetes. You'd have a series of Docker images that are part of that Helm chart. You might have, say, Terraform as a way to configure those services when they're deployed as a service. Well, in this case, you could each of those would have their own in the past, their own software development lifecycle process. Each one would have to go through its own set of validation. This allows you to treat those multiple parts of a single release as a single release and ensure the consistent quality across the software development lifecycle. Not the quality of the contents, because that's up to the developers and things, but the actual quality, the security, the accountability for each part, each segment of the software development lifecycle, which is really super, super important and something the industry is looking to wrap its head around, because it's actually a systemic issue of how do you make sure that all the corresponding pieces for a singular release for anything stays actually together, right? That everything moves in the same motion. This allows you to actually have that. So where companies can now take those microservices release and be able to go ahead, or maybe it's like I said, maybe it's a software component, it's a configuration files, whatever it is. If it takes multiple components, it allows it to treat it as its own software development lifecycle.
And let me put this in a context real quick for those of you that might have said that sounded like really important stuff, Bill, but maybe I didn't follow you because you're super smart and do this all day. Imagine because I see Frankfurt there. Let's say I'm in the automotive industry, right? And we know that automobiles now are computers on wheels. Right. Yeah. They are so much. It is much more. In fact, more than 30% of recalls on automobiles last year were about software, not about anything mechanical. So, and this is just going to increase. So imagine if the thousands of tiny pieces of software that go into that vehicle are all managed individually, and they all have their own pipeline, they all have their own promotion process, they all have their own QA. And then at the end, we're trying to take these 1,000 pieces and put them together and say, look, here's our release. It's great. You might get your release out, but when the compliance guy comes knocking, when legal comes knocking, when a recall comes and they say, what is that piece of software anyway? Tracing that delta backwards through all of those pipe is an absolute nightmare. And you might not even at the end know how to fix it. In this way, I'm taking that release, all of those components at the beginning, pushing it through this promotional process and creating that you see those little evidence folders. I can prove at every stage that this went through and track that proof alongside that release all the way until it ends up where I'm going to be utilizing the software. So this is unique in the industry. And the reason that it's unique in the industry is JFrog is the only one that not only controls the software, but controls the pipes that it runs through. Otherwise, you can't do this. I can't prove it otherwise. But because I own the pipeline and I own as JFrog and what your customers can own for themselves, I own that source of record for how everything was moved through is the only way to accomplish this. So there are no other solutions in the industry that have the capability of accomplishing.
And I'm glad you brought that up about, say, like the automotive industry, right? So also too, look at things like the medical industry, avionics, right? Lots of things out there, especially regulated industries, where not only is consistency and making sure that software is safe, but also the accountability aspect, right? Each one of these, should have like some sort of software bill of materials for each one of these, and then to be able to have a combined effort of all these different components, as Jen said, like say going into the car or any software that can go into any device out there that can kill somebody, like I said, medical devices and whatnot, you're going to want to have that accountability and have that system of record for the entire release. It also cuts down on the amount of time that companies have to do research. If something does unfortunately happen, they can go back and have everything rapidly so they can have a response more consistent and more rapid.
Very good. So you can see some things here of what to listen for. RLM, one more acronym for you. Sorry about that. But it's easier than saying release lifecycle management every time. So thanks for sticking with us through some of that. You can again see some of the buying centers or recommending buyers go in. Now, quickly, we want to move into our very last topic, and it's one that most of your customers have on their list, right? Who hasn't heard of generative AI? Everything from ChatGPT to GitHub Copilot. It seems like there's a new tool every day around how we're going to create content for ourselves, create code for ourselves, do better, smarter, faster with all of these things. So again, thank you for participating in these polls as they come out, so we can learn how to serve you better. But let's talk about machine learning operations. Bill, I think this is one area maybe that some of our partners really know they should be getting into, or their customers are starting to dabble a little bit. But
it's exciting. It's exciting. So here's the thing, is that MLOps is really changing things. I mean, we've watched the evolution over time. As even like deployment processes and everything have become better. The thing is that Kubernetes was the answer for a lot of things for scalability, but now intelligence, right? So whether it's either making software smarter, by becoming more reactive, more adaptive to the users as opposed to just being a static piece of code, whether it's deployment, you name it, right? AI is taking over, and MLOps is amazing, super excited. There's a couple of problems with it that we'll discuss that we're trying to help out here. One of the things with ML models is the data sets that are used to train these things are huge. I mean, even pulling things from Hugging Face, which is like the main one a lot of people use, they're big objects. And the thing is, if you have hundreds of developers doing things, that could take a long time to download. By having them locally and inside your environment using Artifactory and our MLOps repos that we have for Hugging Face, it just really helps companies do it more expeditiously, also to ensure a little bit of security. And also, these models change all the time, allows companies to also have a more consistent way of maintaining those models that they need to from the ever-growing, ever-expanding model realm that's out there right now. So MLOps is a way for companies to do things more efficiently, more effectively, harness the AI modeling to make things better.
And there's a few different, and I think it's maybe important to talk about the few different types of, when it's nice to say AI, it's nice to say machine learning, it's nice to say all these things, but there's so many different categories of this. I want to make sure we know what we're talking about. So when you're thinking of, for yourselves or your customers, about things like ChatGPT, right? That's one type of generative AI that can in fact help developers write code sometimes, but it's kind of for the masses as well, right? I might use it in marketing. Bill might use it to make his emails sound better because he's not great at composing his thoughts in written format, whatever the case may be. But imagine if you are a data scientist, a machine learning engineer, or just a traditional software developer, you got to have these components in your applications now. It's not just for the Alexa of the world anymore, right? I got to have this in my application. I got these big data sets to manage. What am I going to do? I'm going to do exactly what I did 10, 15 years ago with open source. I'm going to go see, hey, has somebody done this already? I'm going to go to a repository. I'm going to go to a public hub and see, is there something here that is already a model that I can use and implement? Because not because I'm a lazy person, but because I'm not an expert in this. And so I'm going to go to places like Hugging Face, and there are others that are emerging, and pull these models down and go, I'm going to utilize this in my application. But like Bill said, Bill, what are the gotchas there though? Once we start doing that as developers, it's great. And these companies want to do AI enabled applications. We all want to do it. We're all excited about it. Uh-oh, what happened?
Yeah, well, the thing is that, of course, here's the thing is there's a lot of different issues that we start seeing now, right? So there are some malicious, nefarious components that are starting to emerge their way out there, right? We're not talking like Skynet level stuff here. We're talking more, not as drastic. But, the thing is that, Jen said, we're treating these now like the way we treat open source libraries for development. Right? I need to do something. I find the model that somebody's already done. I harness the information from this, but those change all the time. They're constantly evolving. People are putting stuff out there and disappearing. What if say somebody isn't maintaining something and you're using that model? Well, now you can actually keep a model locally, right? So it's the same kind of problem that we solved for open source software development. We're doing the same thing for MLOps too, right? These models that people use, you could treat like libraries for software development, but being able to retain them on for longer periods of time. And also too, the more developers you have, instead of pulling from multiple locations or having them pull from the same location multiple times, you now have a central location that they can pull the same information from, providing a consistency in your MLOps development and AI development.
Great. So we were proud to announce at Swamp Up and now talk to you about. We are the first solution in the industry that is bringing ML model management directly into your binary management system like Artifactory. The single source of record for your entire software supply chain can now be your single source of truth for the AI supply chain as well. And we're utilizing Hugging Face. Bill, tell us a little bit about Hugging Face and maybe how customers of our partners here could take advantage of it.
Yeah. So with Hugging Face, if you guys aren't familiar with it, it's a website. You go into it, there's a search, you type in the query, and it's using generative AI behind the scenes to help you fill that information in. But it's basically Hugging Face is a search. It's a search for open models that people have uploaded into this repository, and we proxy those requests too for pulling those models through Artifactory from Hugging Face, right? So it's the same kind of idea, but Hugging Face, just look at it as being a way it's really cool if you get a chance to just dive in, throw in some search terms, and I'm sure somebody out there has created a model around it. You'd be very surprised in the modeling that you find. But really what it is, it's a way for people to create these models and share them with the world. And it's just like for NPM or Node, which it's the same idea of like NPM JS, where third-party libraries come from. Hugging Face is the same kind of idea. And you search it, find models, leverage those models, and have it now also proxy through Artifactory.
So it's nice that we can do it through Artifactory. Good job, attaboy JFrog. One more package. Hey. Yay for us, right? But for a potential customer or already existing customers of JFrog through our partners, what would they now that they have this ability, are they actually able to add models more easily? Is it just a tracking and tracing mechanism? What's the practical value of having something like that in the factory?
It's actually a combination, right? I mean, it's like the same thing that we do for everything else, which is, yes, you can add more. You can actually go ahead and have that traceability aspect behind it, like when it was pulled, how it was used, when it was last utilized, how many times has it been utilized, like these kind of things. So it's the same idea. Sorry, I'm breaking up again.
Very good. And importantly, we do have already in the JFrog security solutions, we spent the first half talking about security. We are also the only ones that you can offer your customers the ability to secure or detect malicious packages in these models. Bill alluded to that
That's
a little
right.
bit before, but we're the only ones that are doing that in the industry right now. So unfortunately, what we're seeing, just like open source repositories as an industry, the bad guys find ways in and are embedding executable code into machine learning models, and nefarious actors are going to nefarious. And unfortunately, we're starting to see that already. So thankfully, it's not just, hey, here's a new repository type or a new package type, but also JFrog is already thinking ahead and helping your customers protect themselves from utilizing some of these models that honestly most of the developers have no idea what's inside. They just know what it does. They're not
Well,
machine experts.
and that's part of the thing too. It's like every other open source library, right? And it was like I said, and like you said, even Hugging Face was a beautiful utopian little landscape when it first started, and then of course, anytime you have that, some sort of malicious, actors could come in and like I said, present nefarious means, all these things that are terrible, and by being preemptive and being able to look at these and make sure that the components you bring in aren't going to be potentially threatening or nefarious, it's just another level of security. And as Jen said, we're the only ones doing this right now, so it's absolutely amazing.
Jens, do you work with other sites other than Hugging Face?
Great, thank you for chiming in there. So right now, and Bill, you can keep me honest. Right now, Hugging Face is the initial foray with this, but we are also getting into support for some other solutions. Yeah, Bill?
That is correct. Yes, we will. We'll be making those announcements. I don't know the exact time frame in which we're doing that. I'm not sure which ones we're supporting next, but we are. Yes, I mean, Hugging Face is the first one, just because it's also the most used right now. It's also, to be honest, the most mature, in my opinion. Once again, we're in greenfield, right? And like you said, Jen, before, these are kind of black box models. You have an input and there's an output. Most of the time, in the in-betweens, the developer doesn't even know what's going on. All they know is that they want to use this model to produce some sort of results that they can use for their code to do what they do, right? And so by protecting them, once again, letting them do the jobs that they do, allowing them to do the craft that they do, but still ensuring that they're not using potentially malicious or nefarious components.
And I would anticipate, just for our friends and partners on the call, we'll mature this solution the same way that we did with other types of repositories. So we start with something popular. With Artifactory back in the day, it was with Java, and now there's more than 30 package types natively supported. We'll approach this with the same kind of universal mindset and add packages and solutions as popularity and business demand require. And I would anticipate this list growing, but I don't want to speak out of turn on specific technologies. So thank you, Judy, for interrupting with that question.
Thank you, Judy.
Great. So what are some challenges moving forward, Bill? And I know we're doing not just product here, but this is a little bit of just knowledge exchange, so we're all on the same page with where we sit as an industry around MLOps. What's the unknowns as we get deeper into our customers?
And the first one here on the list, right, is actually one of the biggest things. Right now there's no solid, consistent standard, right? It's like everything else, right? I mean, DevOps was the same way, DevSecOps. I mean, anytime you introduce something new into the value chain for software development, of course, there'll be some standards eventually done, because it's very, very Wild West, right? It does this with every technology stack. And also, too, a lot of companies, this is new. This is a new technology. Before it was very specific companies that would do this kind of thing. Now we have the ability for any company to interject AI into the things that they're doing. Think about that, right? I mean, that's, even in the industry itself, that's mind-blowing that now we're so easy to leverage something that only a couple of years ago would have seemed so far. So companies are learning, right? Also, too, being able to look at where they began, being able to understand, how it's been used and utilized over time. Companies are learning. And the thing is that eventually we're going to start seeing policies and companies starting to enforce rules around this on what's acceptable and what's not. We saw this with the software development industry and how it evolved over time. Now with ML and AI, companies are going to have to learn to be a little more proactive on how they're bringing things and how they're utilizing things. What are the potential? There's there's a lot of stigma around AI, right? That people like have this, this thing going on, but not every AI is going to take over the world. Some of them are very benign. And the thing is, though, is like I said, companies are still learning, and the big thing is that engineers are learning. And now also too is integrating into the software development lifecycle, the SDLC. So understanding this, and also too down to even now production. I mean, we see companies now learn to do AI more deployment production level of like more intelligence. So yeah, there's a lot of things going on, and it's slowly starting to refine its way into a standard that will then, with these other components, these other bullet points below, will delineate out, right, and start affecting those too.
Yeah. I think it's important for us to recognize with our customers. I say us as partners with our end customers, not just JFrog, your customers, as they experiment, what inevitably comes next, and how are we trying to help you stay ahead of the market on that one? One of the reasons that we're bringing this into a DevOps methodology is, as you saw last week or maybe 10 days ago or so, some of the the White House executive orders on AI and machine learning. These things are going to get regulated quickly from a security perspective, from a usage perspective, whether it's by companies, whether it's by industries, or whether it's by governments. This will happen quickly. And we even see organizations going, maybe I want to allow AI generated code in my dev and test. I don't want to put that in production just yet because I'm uncomfortable. I don't know exactly where it came from or what security vulnerabilities might be introduced. I don't want to put that I want to put it maybe only in this particular type of customer facing application. When the legal guy comes and says, where'd that software come from? I'm going to have to be able to trace that back through my entire pipeline using solutions like our release lifecycle management. These are all coming. They're not there yet because this is so new. But these are all coming. And if you don't already start with your customers, partnering with them to track these types of activities in that single source of truth that they already enjoy, there is great potential for high disruption in their digital shops, to be able to then patch these things on and I think the after effects could be very tragic as some of these things come down the pike. So it's not just FUD, but these things are coming because they have to.
I'm glad you brought that up, Jens, because I mean that's the thing is that, like you said, with any emerging and new new technology coming into the stack, there's a learning curve. We're all learning, right? And I hate to say it, but it's going to be one of these things that I think people are becoming, like, especially because of the executive order. The thing is that it's becoming more proactive instead of it being reactionary. That we're waiting for that AI ML event to happen. That will cause a ruckus in the industry. I mean, that's what happened, right, with SolarWinds. SolarWinds, everybody knew about software supply chain. Everybody knew the dangers and all this. And it wasn't until a major incident happened, then everybody started taking it very, very seriously. And I think in this case, people say, you know what, we don't want to have the SolarWinds of the AI ML world. So, the thing is that let's start putting some regulations in place and start doing that. And actually with JFrog, with us, the whole thing is that, let's toot our own horn, we're starting to look at that potential security aspect that can be a potential threat or issue for companies in the future. But I think organizations are trying to become a little bit more proactive as opposed to reactionary, that like what happened with SolarWinds.
Yeah, and you can understand the paranoia. I mean, speaking of SolarWinds, there were some headlines just a few days ago that now CISOs are going to jail for gross negligence around some of these activities, right? So this is the kind of environment that CIOs and CISOs are in at the moment. It's very fear-based, and so this is one more unknown that they don't want to touch unless they have some certainty around it. So what to listen for? I think this is probably the easiest gimme. You got AI and applications, ML engineers, right? We know all the buzzwords. We do see this coming out of both security and DevOps teams, kind of from the top down and from the bottom up in organizations that are trying to utilize these things and know they need to develop some standards around it. So nothing new under the sun there, but thank you for your attention on that one. This is a growth area for JFrog and for everybody as this industry emerges, and it's very exciting to be able to offer. So in a quick recap, we covered SaaS, static application security testing. We covered catalog and those 4 million packages and growing, and the data that can be gleaned from all of those ahead of time. With the release lifecycle management capabilities and adding that evidence and attestation along the way with that release bundle. And finally, the machine learning operations. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't remind you too, like, what is the value? Some of our partners co-sell with us, some people resell, some people are ISVs or systems integrators. Imagine what you could do with this data for the rest of your customers' ecosystems. Imagine the business decisions you can make if you know exactly what's happening in your pipeline and have the evidence that it's happening. Imagine the risk that you could avert by integrating with something like JFrog catalog and having all of that package data upfront for your customers and services. Imagine if you were able to say, hey, I'm going to integrate with a JFrog SaaS solution, and I know exactly what's the result is of the scans of customers' code, and then the actions that I could take off of that as a business, the metrics that I could derive, we've even got companies looking at DORA metrics, right? The DevOps analysis and reports, these kinds of metrics around efficiency. So integrating with these solutions also has amazing value, let alone being able to resell and help your customers advance their businesses. So I'm very excited about these. Thank you, Bill, so much for joining us live from KubeCon in Chicago. I'm glad you found a somewhat quiet corner to join it. And this is some meaty stuff. Actually, your headphones did their job. So we did.
Excellent.
I think it worked out well. And thank you for the other Froggers behind the scenes, the partner managers, the partner marketing team, everybody for helping us get these solutions out into market. Again, we're here to help you, not just to throw these things over the wall. You can even have people just like Bill come alongside of you, help educate your customers, be your partner as we take these to market. We believe in these solutions, we stand behind them, and we stand behind our relationship with you. So thank you for being with us as we take all of these things out into the world. And if there's no further questions, Judy, I'll ask you to pipe up. If there's no further questions, we'll give a few of the minutes back.
All right, gents, thank you so much. Thank you, Judy. Really appreciate you both.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening. Cheers.
Be safe, everybody. Cheers.
Bye now.